The rain keeps pouring down, non-stop for days now. The outside world is wet and sticky, and even indoors feels heavy with the humidity. Inside, two people are close, getting intimate, and their voices are soft and heated, the tension in the air matching the intensity of the storm outside. As they move together, they talk to each other in between moments. Meanwhile, the female lead gazes out the window at the dark sky, watching the rain fall relentlessly. It's been nearly 6 years, 5 years and 10 months to be exact, since she was locked away. Finally, she's out. After so long, she's standing outside, feeling the coolness of the rain soaking through her clothes. No umbrella, no excitement. Freedom doesn't feel as sweet as she imagined. It's just damp. Her clothes cling to her as she steps in a puddle, water splashing all around. There's no rush to go anywhere. She just walks, lost in thought. Then, she pulls out a piece of paper. It's a little crumpled, but she can still read the address on it clearly. She looks at it, sighs, and then starts heading toward it. She needs to go there now. She doesn't have anywhere else to go. When she arrives, she's already soaked to the bone, but she finds an umbrella waiting for her. Someone had seen her drenched and kindly handed it over. As she takes the umbrella, she remembers her last conversation with Minyoung, her old cellmate. Minyoung had a longer sentence, so she wasn't getting out anytime soon. But she'd heard about the situation with our girl, how she had no place to go after being released, and offered to help. That's how she ended up at Minyoung's place. The umbrella feels like a small kindness, but it's enough to make her realize something. As she walks into the warmth of Minyoung's home, she remembers what Minyoung and the person who gave her the umbrella said. There are still people in this world who care about others, who offer help without asking for anything in return. That thought lingers with her as she steps inside, finally finding a place to rest. The building Minyoung lives in smells musty, just like the prison. Our girl can't seem to escape that smell. She walks around a little, trying to find the right floor where Minyoung's room is. It's room 102, but it's actually in the basement of the building. She goes downstairs and there it is, right at the bottom of the stairs. The door's all the way inside. She punches in the key code, opens the door, and steps in. It looks pretty basic, kind of like what you'd expect from a basement room, but it's really dusty. You can tell it's been empty for a while, probably more than 6 months. She slides open the window to get some fresh air, then plops down on the couch, feeling super tired. Her eyes shut, and she falls asleep almost immediately, sinking into deep, sweet slumber. One name keeps popping into her mind, Seoh. She remembers the young girl, so cheerful, always smiling. Seoh had said it was raining outside and asked if her Unnie wanted to go see the ocean with her. Suddenly, the memory shifts. It's Seoh again, but this time she's not smiling. The cheerful girl is lying unconscious in a pool of blood. What happened? It's unclear. Our girl is panicking, calling out for Seoh. She's holding a knife, crying and screaming, shouting that Seoh is going to die. She wakes up with a start, still crying, her face wet with tears. She looks around and realizes it's nighttime now. She must have fallen asleep on the couch after coming here. There's a noise and she tenses up, her face full of worry. Someone's here. A tall figure appears at the door. It's a man. She doesn't hesitate to ask, "Who are you? How did you get in?" In that moment, she wonders if this is the man Minyoung warned her about. Back at prison, Minyoung told Seoh to be careful, because there's a weirdo living next door. He's a creepy guy who kept bothering Minyoung, always trying to get her to sleep with him before she was sent to prison. Minyoung had warned her that getting involved with someone like him wouldn't end well for Seoh. The man walks right up to her, and with an intense voice, she asks him what he wants. He just smirks and ignores her question completely. Instead, he tells her she's really pretty, pulls out his lighter and lights it. He asks her why she left the door open. He thinks it's dangerous. He takes a puff of his cigarette and looks her right in the eye, waiting for her to answer. She doesn't respond immediately, just staring at the cigarette. She's a bit distracted, almost in a daze, wondering how long it's been since she had a cigarette herself. All of a sudden, she really feels the urge to smoke one. She asks him for one, and he just smiles, calling her pretty girl again. He holds out the cigar to her, but then he says something even stranger. He asks if she'd like to suck on something else instead. It's nasty talk for someone she just met, and Seo wonders who this guy even is. Where is this going to lead? The young man looks at her with a grin, waiting for her reply. Seo's eyes sparkle in the dim light, and she thinks to herself that he must think she's naive or something, probably teasing her. After a moment, she finally speaks up and says yes to his question. His smile widens, and he takes a puff of his cigarette. Seo finds it strange, though, because the cigarette has this oddly refreshing scent. It's definitely not the usual cigarette smell. She notices it's different, and for a moment, she wonders if the fresh scent is coming from his hand. Just as she's about to take the cigarette from him, he yanks it away quickly. Seo's face falls, and she asks angrily what exactly he thinks he's doing. He leans in closer and asks her if she thinks it'll be that easy, as if there won't be some kind of payment for it. Just like Minyoung said, this guy really is light-hearted. Seo is sharp, and she can tell he's been getting more and more worked up since he walked in. His bulge in his pants is getting pretty noticeable, and it's clear his intentions are anything but pure. It's obvious what he wants when he barges into a woman's home in the middle of the night with no real reason. Seo has heard a lot about him from Minyoung, but something about him feels off. The one thing that stands out, though, is that he's actually pretty handsome. She might be forgetting, though, that he's also known for being a bit of a womanizer. Seo sits up, clearly frustrated, but also determined. She tells him she'll pay him back double, but then quickly takes it back, and says she'll pay him 3 times as much. The young man seems to like where this is going, and he agrees, but says she'll have to increase the offer even more. Seo gets really angry now, and she snaps at him, asking if he's trying to scam her. She wants to know just how much he plans to take from her. He just smiles, unfazed, and says that he's got to make a living somehow. Seo isn't having it, though, and she snaps at him again, saying he's Choi Minyoung's lover, and that she's Minyoung's good friend. She asks him if he can't even do this little favor for his lover's friend. As soon as she says this, his smile fades, and his whole expression changes. He stretches out the cigarette he's been smoking, but Seo doesn't want it. She thinks it's petty of him to offer her that one, especially when he could just give her a new one. Seo takes the cigarette from him and takes a puff, feeling a moment of calm wash over her. He watches her and comments that she's smoking it like it's really good. Seo shrugs and tells him it is delicious. The young man grabs the cigarette from her hand and takes a puff himself, still staring at her. Then, he starts to turn around to leave, but Seo asks for another cigarette. He tells her it's the last one he has. Seo isn't sure if he's serious, so she asks again if it's really the last one. He squats down in front of her, and says he's made a big decision tonight. Seo thanks him for the cigarette, and he says it was rewarding to see her enjoying it so much. He rubs his lips with the back of his hand and gives her a look that seems to say more than he means to. He asks if she's interested in some help. Seo, surprised by the question, looks at him and asks if he thinks she's just that easy. He's taken aback by her response for a moment, and then he gets up and pulls a pack of cigarettes from his back pocket. He'd lied about running out of cigarettes. He offers her a trade instead. Seo suddenly remembers what Minyoung had told her about this guy. Minyoung had warned her about him, telling her if he ever became a problem, she should just kick him in the nuts. Wild advice, right? But Seo figures he's probably just a light-hearted guy, and not really someone to be afraid of. Seo stands up and turns down his offer. The young man says it's a shame and tells her he's on his way out. Before leaving, he says a few things to her. He tells Seo to keep the door open if she ever wants to smoke again. She asks him why he thinks she should do that, and he just says it's nice if neighbors get along well. He calls her pretty girl one more time and adds that he's older than Choi Minyoung, her cellmate. Seo asks if he's indirectly asking her to show him more respect or use honorifics when talking to him. He says that's not what he means, he just wants her to know, and whether she respects him or not is up to her. He waves goodbye and says she pretty much took advantage of him tonight, but he's fine with it. Seo thinks he's not that bad. But deep down, she knows he's probably just as bad as Minyoung said. The next morning, Seo wakes up to a knock at the door. She wonders who could be knocking and what they want so early. She opens the door, but no one's there. Instead, she finds a pack of cigarettes and a lighter on the floor. It's a strange situation. It's pretty clear that the guy from next door must have left it. Based on what she's heard about him and their little encounter last night, he seems like the kind of guy who'd leave her cigarettes. Seo doesn't think he's such a bad guy, though. It seems like he really does want to help out as neighbors. She lights up a cigarette, feeling a little weak since she hasn't had any food yet. But the pleasure of smoking makes her feel better, and the sharp smoke clears her head. Seo feels too drained and unmotivated to go outside, so she just lies back on the sofa and falls asleep again. She ends up repeating the same routine over and over, smoking again and again without really noticing the time pass. The outside view darkens as the rain keeps falling, and the sky gets even darker. She doesn't even realize how much time has gone by. In her dream, the young man from next door appears to catch her, but for some reason, she doesn't run away. It doesn't matter anymore, she thinks to herself. The rain hasn't stopped for days now, and unfortunately, she's run out of cigarettes, so she can't even get that small moment of peace anymore. Seo decides to step outside for a bit, hoping to find her neighbor, but she isn't sure if he's home. When she tries to close the door, a hand stops her. She's shocked because she didn't expect anyone to be around, especially with how quiet it has been. It's the young man she's been looking for. He leans closer to her with a smile that feels a little too confident. He must have smelled the cigarette smoke coming from her room. He's dressed for something, holding a wet umbrella, like he's just come back from somewhere, maybe work. Seo wonders if he's on his way to work now, but she only asks if he came to bring her cigarettes, because he really startled her. He ignores her question, just walks right into her room without waiting for an invitation. She asks him why he came in, and he answers casually, saying neighbors invite each other over, so it shouldn't be strange. Once inside, he glances around and notices she's been smoking all day. As he talks, she lights another cigarette, and he leans in really close, making her jump from the sudden movement. He grabs the cigarette from her hand, which she doesn't like at all. He takes a puff and, with a cold expression, tells Seo to go inside and wash up. It almost sounds like he cares. There's something about this guy, his presence is so strong that it's almost overwhelming. The young man grabs the cigarette from Seo and tells her he's just taking it for now. Seo says it's hers since he gave it to her earlier, but he corrects her, saying he didn't give it to her, he just lent it to her. He sits down with a smile on his face, waiting for her to go wash up as he asked. Seo can't help but think he looks really attractive while smoking. He tells her again to go take a shower, and while she's too tired to argue, she still complains, asking why she has to take one. She leaves anyway. In the bathroom, she looks at herself in the mirror. Her hair's a mess, greasy and sticky. She remembers what the young man had told her earlier, look in the mirror and find the answer to her question. Seo steps out of the bathroom, determined to get the cigarette, even if she feels gross. Seo isn't really concerned about how she looks right now. The young man tells her he never said she was gross. In fact, he says she's still pretty, and her looks are unaffected by how she feels, so there's nothing to worry about. He tells her again he'll give her the cigarette after she washes up, and he's not going to change his mind. Seo, not wanting to argue, decides to go ahead and take the shower. When she's done, she comes out and finds the young man sitting at the table, waiting for her. He invites her to sit down with him. There's food on the table, and he tells her to try it. Seo realizes he doesn't seem to plan on eating himself, he just wants to sit and watch her. She asks if this is part of the deal, if she has to eat before she gets the cigarette. He smiles when she asks if this is part of the deal, and says she's quick to catch on. Seo goes ahead and starts eating. The food is warm, and even though she was too tired to eat before, now her stomach feels a little better, and she feels like she has more energy. The young man sits there watching her, almost like he's admiring a piece of art in a gallery. She asks why he's staring at her, and he answers, saying it's because she's pretty, so he couldn't help himself. After finishing the meal, Seo slams her spoon down on the table and asks if he's satisfied now. She feels like she's done what he wanted, so she wants the cigarette. He hands it to her, and she takes a puff, enjoying the feeling of bliss again. It's still amazing, like nothing she's ever felt or tasted before. Watching and making his own observations, which seems a little wild. He says that if he's right, she'll probably want to do more with him too. Seo looks at him with no emotion on her face, cigar in hand, and tells him flat out that it's not going to happen. He quickly stands up when he hears her answer and walks out of her room, but not before saying, "We'll see about that," as he leaves. Seo watches him go, seeing the tall, handsome guy disappear out of sight. It all feels a little strange. He came in, cleaned her up, fed her, and then just left. Her mind keeps wondering what his deal is. She checks the door later, and finds a package outside. It's him again, leaving something for her. Every day now, he leaves cigarettes and food at her door without making a sound. It's definitely strange. What is he up to? It's obvious he's interested in her, but what does he really want? She picks up a cigarette and decides to light it. As soon as she takes a puff, a sharp pain hits her head. Suddenly, she hears a voice screaming in her head, "You're going to die." Seo falls to her knees, covering her ears, completely freaked out by the voices. No matter how hard she tries to focus on something else, the disturbing thoughts won't leave her. It's like they keep taking over her mind, and it's making her panic. In that moment, Seo's eyes light up with an idea. She realizes she needs help, and for some reason, the man next door comes to mind. He's different, a stranger with a strange way of getting involved in her life. She remembers how he acted the night he made his offer to her. Seo shakes off the panic and manages to stand up, her weak body moving toward the sofa. She hears a noise, someone's at the door. It's still raining hard outside. Seo wonders how much time has passed as she slowly wakes up in bed, the feeling of sleep still heavy on her. The young man is standing over her, looking straight into her eyes. He casually asks if she slept well, like it's a normal thing to say. Seo looks around, realizing she's been covered with his coat while she was sleeping. He explains that he came in, found her shivering, and decided to help. Seo sniffs the coat, recognizing the same refreshing scent she noticed before. He asks what she's doing, and Seo, with a hint of surprise, compliments him, saying he smells good. The young man leans in closer and asks if she's feeling all right. Seo just sits there, speechless, with innocent curiosity in her eyes. He smirks and tells her that she purposely left the door wide open, almost like she wanted him to come in. Seo tries to explain, saying he's got it all wrong. She remembers him telling her to leave the door open if she wanted to smoke. The young man quickly responds, correcting her. He says he never mentioned anything about cigarettes. What he actually said was to leave the door open if she wanted him to come in. He doesn't clarify what exactly he meant by that, and he asks her what she wants to do. Seo, feeling a bit frustrated, just says she wants everything for free. His expression changes, his demeanor darkens, and he now looks more intense. He tells her there's no way he's been giving her all these things without expecting something in return. He leans closer, casting a shadow over her, and Seo starts to tremble with fear. She doesn't feel safe at all. Overcome with fear, her body reacts with adrenaline, and she quickly runs out of the room and out of the building. She runs through the rain, her heart racing. The voices in her head echo again, telling her, "You're going to die." In the chaos, she trips and falls hard on the ground. The rain pours down, adding to the sad, heavy atmosphere. As she lies there, someone approaches slowly, the rain soaking him too. It's the guy from next door, and he covers her with his coat. He asks if she's okay. Back inside the building, Seo is sitting in a corner, still wrapped in the coat, but she's drenched and shaking from the cold. The young man tells her to wait a moment, and he starts taking off his wet shirt. She can't help but notice how good he looks, his physique impressively toned as he stands before her. He moves closer to her and turns on the heater, letting the warm air fill the room. Then, he uses the warm water to gently help her clean up, hoping it will help her feel better and warmer. Seo feels a bit embarrassed by the situation, especially since he's touching her, so he notices and takes a step back. He tries to make her feel more comfortable by saying he'll turn off the lights, so she doesn't feel awkward. He switches off the lights, then comes back to her, standing so close that their faces are almost touching. He quietly says that he'll help her take her clothes off, but Seo starts to wonder what's really going on. Is something about to happen between them? She feels uncertain and unsure of what to do next. The young man takes charge, carefully helping Seo get cleaned up with a gentle touch. She wonders how he can keep such a serious expression, almost cold like a stranger, but his actions are so tender and considerate. He pauses for a moment and touches her lips. She feels a little nervous as things seem to be moving toward a more intimate moment. She finds herself thinking back to her time in prison, where some of the other inmates believed that getting close to someone was a way to escape a difficult reality. It's a strange thought, but for some reason, Seo feels like it might not be such a bad thing after all. Being with this man has felt like a strange adventure, and for the first time in a while, she feels a bit of relief. The young man asks her what she's thinking and tells her she can speak freely. She doesn't know what to say, but something inside her urges her to act. Seo starts to think that being with this guy has helped her clear her mind. It's strange, but she begins to understand why people sometimes look for connection in this way. She even finds herself regretting not trying it out sooner. At one point, she had turned him down, not wanting to take things any further, but he backed off quietly, surprising her. Now, they are back in the living room, both dressed and sitting with cigars in their mouths. Seo starts the conversation, mentioning something she's heard before, that people realize they're alive when they feel someone else's warmth. The first time, she had felt warmth like that since being in prison was from him. The young man asks if she'd like to do this again sometime, and Seo asks him why he'd want to. He answers in a way that catches her attention, saying he's just trying to keep the gorgeous lady alive. Seo doesn't argue with that, and it's clear she's fine with it. The young man tries to keep the conversation going by asking her how she ended up in prison. The question takes Seo by surprise. She didn't expect him to ask something so personal. She explains that she was sentenced for a failed murder attempt. It's strange how they're opening up to each other now, especially after everything that's happened between them. It feels a little odd, but they're slowly getting to know one another better. Seo tells him the full story about her arrest and what led to it. She explains that she tried to harm the director of the orphanage back then. It was a strange experience for her. The feeling of holding a knife and trying to use it on someone else's body felt odd. Even though she used all her strength, things didn't go the way she thought they would. No matter how much someone might deserve death, their survival instinct is so strong that it makes them fight for their life, pushing away the blade with everything they have. Seo says it would have been better if the director had actually died. She feels strongly that it's a shame it didn't happen. The young man doesn't say anything in response to her story. Time passes, and Seo gets up from the bed, only to see her neighbor standing at the door. She asks him why he's there. He says he really thought she had died or something, and then tells her that she's been sleeping for 2 days. Seo is shocked. She wonders how he got into her apartment, because she had locked herself in. That means he must have known her front door password. The young man doesn't answer her question. Instead, he says he brought her some porridge. Seo thinks it's not too strange. Minyoung might have told him by now. She smells her clothes and realizes they're sweaty and smelly from sleeping. The first thing she decides to do is take a shower, because she feels gross. Afterward, she heads back to the bedroom and looks through Minyoung's locker for something nice to wear. She picks up a piece of underwear, and notices it has a strange shape, color, and design. The young man walks into the bedroom, as if answering her unspoken question. He tells her he couldn't sit still, that just hearing her in the bathroom was driving him crazy. Seo notices that he's not holding back anymore like he did before. He just says there's no reason for him to pretend anymore. Seo looks at him, her eyes intense, and asks him to take off his shirt. She realizes the shirt he's wearing isn't her size, and it doesn't even fit her well. They sit down to eat the meal, and he tells her the shirt actually suits her very well. He offers to roll up the sleeves for her, doing it with quick and precise movements. He then tells her to eat quickly, because he has other plans for her after the meal. At 20, Seo had never been involved with men. While in prison, the other inmates used to pity her and share stories about men. They were always angry when talking about men, saying that men only thought about one thing, sex. Seo understood that their anger probably came from wanting more, genuine love and sincerity from the men they had met. But Seo didn't long for those kinds of dreams. Instead, she found herself preferring this lighter, more carefree kind of attraction. It felt like the perfect escape from her troubles. She sets the food aside, saying she's not hungry right now. He asks if she'd like something else, but she turns him down. She gets up and moves to the couch, saying she's been full since yesterday. Seo tells him that it's actually fun to watch how her body reacts to everything. She picks up the cigarette pack from the table, takes one out, and lights it up. The young man asks how she managed to keep smoking while she was in prison. Seo explains that it wasn't really about quitting smoking, but more about holding back as a person. It's a typical answer from someone who's been smoking for a long time. He asks her how long she's been smoking to sound so experienced, and she tells him she's been smoking since middle school. The young man comments that it's clear she's been rebellious since she was young. He asks if she learned it from a boyfriend back then. Seo responds that she actually learned it from her older sister, Unnie. He then asks her if she's a virgin. Seo answers with a straightforward yes. The young man is curious and lifts her up, placing her on his lap. He gently takes the cigar from her hand and tosses it away. Then, he starts to unbutton her top, and they share a quiet moment together. They get intimate and of course, he's her first. Seo wakes up in bed and sees the young man sitting there, smoking. She asks why he's not asleep. She also mentions that she wants to smoke, too. He turns around when he hears her voice and asks if he woke her up. He adds that he's curious if it's a habit of hers to mumble in her sleep, saying she sounds like a baby when she does. Seo laughs a little at that. The young man seems genuinely curious about her, and now he wants to know why she tried to hurt the director with a knife. Seo tells him that he's really curious about everything. He looks at her and says that she's actually too cute to be a murderer. Seo smiles and says he looks even better when he smiles at her. She asks him for a cigarette, but he turns her down. Seo then tells him the story about why she wanted to hurt the director. She says that the director had taken her Uni's life in cold blood, so she wanted to get back at him. The young man asks if she succeeded in getting revenge, and Seo answers that she did, but only to a certain extent. He says that she did the right thing, but wonders how she got caught. Seo explains that she's the only one who knows the director was responsible for her Uni's death. He says it's a shame she didn't manage to end the director's life. The young man joins her in bed, and it's a little cramped for both of them. He tells her she's cute, but Seo asks him to move over a bit. He asks her what she wants to do now, and they talk for a while. Then Seo asks him what he's so curious about. She tells him that if he wants, he can just be open and tell her what's on his mind. The young man says he doesn't have a specific reason for being curious, but is genuinely just interested. He points out that when someone so young picks up a knife, they must have been ready to risk everything. But now, she's back in society, and he wonders how she'll live her life from now on. Seo admits she hasn't really thought about it deeply. However, there is one thing that's always on her mind: curiosity about relationships. She says she was curious because she had never experienced it before. Now that she knows what it's like, she plans to explore more in the future. Seo says she feels lucky because there's someone who treats her kindly and makes her feel cared for. The young man says her approach to these things seems a bit distant. He tells her she doesn't seem to care much, as if it could have been with anyone, and that doesn't seem to bother her. He says she should at least say something nice in situations like this. They get intimate. They're both in bed together, and the young man asks her a question, curious about why it's so easy for her to be with him, someone she barely knows. Seo looks at him and says he seems like a nice guy, but she admits that he could be pretending, too. The young man then asks how she would feel if he were a psychopath. Seo thinks for a moment, processing the question before replying. She says that the worst thing that could happen is that she might lose her life, so it's like she doesn't really care about it. The young man isn't happy with her answer. It almost sounds like she's saying it's okay for her to die. Then, the scene shifts to the past. We see Seo as a little girl, sitting on a seesaw with another girl. The other girl asks if Seo wants to stay with her and offers her a chocolate milk drink. Seo looks at it with excitement and thirst, clearly loving it. The other girl tells her she bought it with leftover money from her school lunch. Seo takes the drink eagerly, enjoying every sip. The other girl pats Seo on the head, telling her that she thinks of Seo like a little sister, and cares about her a lot. Seo, filled with happiness, says she feels the same way, and sees the other girl as her real older sister. From that moment on, they officially accept each other as real sisters. Seo's older sister, Sung-ji, is beautiful and kind, and Seo really looks up to her. She admires her so much and dreams of growing up to be just like her. Over the years, their bond has only grown stronger. They've become more attached, and Seo now calls her Uni, a term for an older sister. After not seeing each other for a while, they finally meet up again, and share a warm hug. Uni has brought some things for Seo, and Seo is amazed by the delicious food and treats spread out on the table. Ani smiles and says she bought all of it just for her little sister, hoping she'll enjoy it and eat a lot. Even after Seo left the orphanage and grew up into an adult, her Ani still took great care of her. Ani would often send her money to help out, and one day she hands Seo an envelope with cash, saying Seo's pocket money is all used up. Seo, feeling curious, asks where Ani gets the money from, wondering how she manages to make money while being a college student. She asks if Ani works a part-time job. Ani smiles at Seo and says yes, she does work, because her biggest wish is to send Seo to college. She wants to make sure Seo doesn't have to worry about her studies or money, that she can focus on her education without any stress. Ani says she'll take care of everything when it comes to money, and Seo should focus on her studies. Seo promises that she will treat her sister well when the time comes. For Seo, all she needs is her Ani. Her good, comfortable life is all thanks to her sister. The rain pours down heavily outside, just like it has been for days. Seo slowly wakes up, her eyes barely open, trying to adjust to the light coming in. She hears loud knocks on her front door. It's her neighbor from next door, the man she's been seeing regularly since their night together. He's dressed sharply, like he's heading to work. He asks if she slept well, but Seo doesn't answer. She sits up on the couch, lost in thought. In her mind, she knows why he's here. His reason is pretty clear, and the truth is, she's allowed his visits because he's always there. He pays attention to her, and that's something she's come to rely on. The man lifts Seo up and sits down, placing her on his lap. He asks if she's had breakfast yet, but he already knows the answer. It's obvious to him, but he says it's fine. He suggests they eat together later. Seo relaxes into his embrace, taking in his scent, and she can't help but compliment him on how good he smells. He asks if she really likes his scent that much, and Seo smiles, saying yes. She asks what kind of perfume he uses, but he teases her, saying he won't tell her. He enjoys the way she clings to him to smell him, and he doesn't want her to stop. Seo laughs and calls him petty. They talk a little more, and then things start to get more intimate. But halfway through, Seo suddenly stops, saying she saw something or someone. The man shrugs it off and tells her to forget about it. They continue, but Seo was right. Someone is indeed outside, watching. There's someone standing outside in the rain, right in front of the building. The person is wearing a hood and staring directly at Seo's building. Seo wonders who it could be and what they want. What does this mean for her and the young man? He holds Seo close and gently caresses her skin. He asks her if she's hungry, but she says no. She just lies there, taking in his sweet scent. Again, he asks what she wants to eat, if there's anything special she's craving, but Seo says she's fine. Then, he asks her what her favorite food is, wondering if it's something sweet like cake. Seo tells him she doesn't like sweet things. She's starting to get annoyed by his constant questions. He backs off suddenly, which surprises Seo, because it's not like him. She asks why he's pulling away so suddenly. He says he'll let her take a whiff of him after she eats. He wants to take her somewhere, and Seo is curious about where they're going. He tells her it's a place he thinks will help her clear her head. The monsoon season has been going on for what feels like forever now, and people say it's going to last longer than usual this year. They step outside together, and Seo realizes that this is the first time she's gone out since she got here. They walk with an umbrella, staying dry from the rain. Seo complains that it's such a hassle, having to go out like this. She says she would have preferred just staying at home together and enjoying each other's company. The young man pulls her a little closer, and then he says something strange. He tells her that people might be like animals, but he likes to think of himself more like a plant. Seo is confused and asks him what he's talking about. He explains that just like a plant needs sunlight and water to stay alive, she needs those things too. In his eyes, she's withering right now. Seo repeats his words back to him, saying a human being as a plant doesn't make sense. It doesn't match his identity at all. Seo isn't buying his excuse at all. She thinks he's the most animalistic person she's ever met. The young man laughs and says he'll fix what he said. She's the one who can be a plant, and he's a herbivore. Seo pulls his hands off her and tells him not to touch her in public. This is his punishment for dragging her out, when she didn't want to go. He suggests they go back inside if she's not feeling it. But as they continue walking, Seo's eyes catch something on the rooftop. There's a guy in a hoodie with a face cap casting a shadow over his face, staring at them. She wonders who he is, what he wants, and if he's watching them. The young man doesn't notice and asks what's wrong. Seo points to the top of the building to show him, but when they look again, the guy is gone. Seo says she saw someone, but now they're gone. The young man says he's sure there was someone, since it's a place where people live. Seo steps closer to him, agreeing with what he said. He tells her she's being really clingy. The streets are full of people walking around with umbrellas, busy with their own lives. Seo comments that she sees a lot of couples around, so she guesses they probably look like a couple too. The young man suddenly kisses her, and Seo is shocked by it. She doesn't know how to react, and she's not happy about it. She tells him that they are in public and not alone. He replies that they have to do at least this much to look like a couple. He says he can't take it and that they should hurry up. He's almost at their destination, just across the street. They walk into a store, and an old lady behind the counter looks at them. She seems really grumpy and mean. The old lady asks if the two of them came in to eat. She looks pretty scary with her grumpy face. The young man snaps back at her, saying of course they came to eat, what else would they be here for? Seo wonders why he's being so rude to the old lady. They sit down, and the young man immediately starts asking her questions. He asks why the store is so empty, why there aren't many customers. He even asks if her business is going to shut down soon. Seo doesn't understand what his problem is with the granny. The old lady answers him, saying her business isn't dying, the lunch rush just ended. Then, Granny turns her attention to Seo. She asks if the young man came with Seo, and says that Seo looks so pale. The young man tells her it's none of her business, and tells her to just make some kimbap. The granny calls him a rude jerk, and walks into the kitchen to prepare their meal. Seo looks around the place and feels really uncomfortable. Everything here feels unfamiliar to her. She just wants to leave right away, and go back home. The young man tells her to sit down, so Seo does, sitting beside him and resting her head on his shoulder. He asks her why she's acting like this all of a sudden. Seo says she doesn't know why. He then asks her if she really didn't think she'd know better than him, and she replies that she has no idea what he's talking about. The grumpy granny finishes making the kimbap, and brings it over to their table. As she serves them, she asks if Seo is the young man's girlfriend. He quickly replies that it's none of her business, even though he adds that she has eyes, but they probably don't work as well anymore. Granny shoots back at him, calling him a jerk and joking that she hopes he doesn't pray too hard for her to go blind. She says she can still see just fine, and if she couldn't, the store probably would have been shut down by now. The young man says her eyesight will fail soon enough, making Seo wince at how harsh he sounds. She can't help but ask him why he's being so rude to the old lady. She wonders if he's close to the granny in any way. He shrugs, saying Seo isn't completely wrong, he does know the granny a little bit. Then, he leans closer to Seo, holding a piece of kimbap with his fork, and tries to feed it to her. He tells her that if she's thinking about dieting, she should forget it. In his opinion, she has a perfect figure already, so dieting wouldn't do her any good. According to him, There's nothing left to lose except her chest and butt. Seo doesn't really care, so she just shrugs. The young man asks her to imagine if his genitals shrank. He says if that happened, who would be missing out? Seo laughs and says it would be him. He disagrees, saying it wouldn't bother him at all. After all, he says, it's just a quick pee and that's it. He tells her she'll be the one missing out with something the size of a peanut. Seo looks at him, a bit confused, and asks if he's serious. Does it really shrink that much? He gently touches her lips and says she just has to imagine it in extremes to make it more fun. Seo thinks this guy is super strange. He's honestly a little creepy. He suddenly stops, pulls out his phone, and answers a call. As he walks away to talk, Seo calls after him, asking if he could answer the call here, but he says he'll be right back and steps out. Now, Seo is left alone in the store with the granny. They sit in silence for a while, neither of them saying anything. Eventually, the granny breaks the silence and tells Seo to stay away from the young man. She says he's not a good person. Seo remembers that she had been warned about him before. Her cellmate, Minyoung, had told her to stay away from him, but she didn't listen. Now, things have turned out the way they have. Seo clings to Granny's words, feeling a little thrown off. She recalls Minyoung's warning about the guy next door, a lazy womanizer with nothing to offer. Granny sounds just like her. Seo is unfazed. She knows what he's like, but only cares about what he can do for her right now. Granny's gaze makes her uneasy, so Seo says she'll be back and heads out. Granny warns her one last time about getting mixed up with someone so unlucky. As Seo walks away, she thinks about that unlucky comment, almost amused. She doesn't consider herself all that lucky, either. Her thoughts drift to the guy next door, wondering where he went without an umbrella. She strolls for a while and ends up stopping in front of a statue, staring at it. She remembers a fellow inmate talking about how they both lived in Bakadong, and describing her middle school's creepy statue at the entrance. The woman used to avoid looking at it, terrified it might make eye contact, and shared a rumor that the statue roamed the schoolyard at night. Seo remembers how much that inmate used to talk about this statue back then. Now that she's seeing it herself, she agrees, it really does look creepy. While she's staring at it, a guy in a hood suddenly grabs her hands from behind. Startled, she turns to see him smiling in a weird, almost sleazy way. He tells her she's beautiful and asks for her number. Seo is shaken, but she manages to say she doesn't have a phone. He doesn't believe her and asks again, saying it's fine if they are just friends. Before she can respond, she hears someone calling out random numbers behind the hooded guy. It's her neighbor from next door, towering over him and continuing to call out numbers in a steady voice. The guy in the hood seems intimidated, mumbles an apology, and quickly runs off. Her neighbor asks if she's okay, and Seo nods, saying she's fine and wasn't hurt. He points out that they are at a school and asks why she ended up here of all places. Seo explains, she just wandered over without any real reason. He then jokingly asks if she came out just to see him, but she brushes it off and instead asks how his phone call went. He says it was about work. Just then, 3 men in the distance start walking slowly toward them. Her neighbor notices them from the corner of his eye but stays calm and doesn't react. Instead, he suggests they go grab something good to eat. Seo laughs, reminding him they just ate not long ago, and now he's already suggesting another meal. He insists, saying she barely ate anything back at the old lady's store. They keep walking down the road together. Seo asks where they're going, and he tells her they are almost there. Soon enough, they step into a small restaurant, take their seats, and enjoy a hot meal. As they eat, he suddenly brings up a topic about sex, and Seo gives him a look, asking if he's out of his mind. While they talk, he spots the figures outside who seem to be watching them. He quickly says he's finished eating and suggests they leave. Seo can't help but think about how odd he's acting today. First, he wanted to eat, and now he's in a hurry to leave. He's so unpredictable. They start walking faster, and Seo asks why they're speeding up. He just smiles and says that walking quickly after a meal is healthy. Seo rolls her eyes, saying he's been acting strange all day. They keep moving down the rainy street, until they reach a bus stop and board a public bus. It all happens in a flash. Just as the bus is about to move, he picks her up and lifts her onto it. The driver complains that his actions were reckless. Seo is shaken, her hair is a mess, and she's completely confused. She asks him what's going on, but he just says he wanted to make sure they got on the bus together. Meanwhile, the three men who had been following them break into a run, trying to catch up, but the bus pulls away too quickly for them to reach it. One of the men sighs and tells the others to bring their car around. Another one makes a phone call, reporting that the young man boarded bus number 23 at the Barker Bank intersection. The call ends, and we're introduced to a new character, a man who's clearly angry about this news. He sneers, calling the young man a rat trying to escape. Who is this man, and what does he have to do with the guy next door? Seo asks him where they're going, but he just says somewhere nice. She points out that he hasn't told her anything, and that he's been acting really weird today. He tells her they're almost there, and then he takes her to a place where she can see the whole city. He asks her what she thinks of it, if it's worth seeing, and she tells him it is. She starts wondering why he's acting so strange today, and what's going on with him. He's been so quiet and mysterious. She asks herself where he went earlier without saying anything, and just then, she hears some voices. She wonders what that sound is, and follows it. She finds him talking on the phone. He's telling the person on the other end to figure things out on their own and stop sending people to follow him around everywhere. Later, Seo is on the roof, smoking, and she wonders who he's talking to. He's not acting like his usual lazy self, instead, he seems rough and wild. She starts remembering what he said on the phone and asks herself what it all means. She hears footsteps behind her, and it's him. He says he's been looking for her for a while now. He asks her what she's doing, and she answers that she's not doing much. She starts thinking that maybe it's just her imagination, but it feels like he's staring at her. She wonders if it's because she overheard his call. She thinks to herself that she doesn't know what's going on, but she should stop overthinking it. She's tired and ends up leaning on him, saying she wants to go home right away. He suggests they should go and be intimate instead. Afterward, Seo says he's making things difficult for her. She feels really exhausted. He asks if she wants to go wash up, and she agrees. She tells him to carry her, and he does without hesitation. He kisses her, and she thinks to herself how serious he looks. Maybe she should tease him a little. She turns on the shower, and he asks if she's enjoying messing with him. She shrugs and says maybe. He suggests making things more fun by washing each other, but she refuses. She says it's more work for her since he's bigger than her. He tells her he'll do twice the work and wash her thoroughly. She agrees but asks him to sit down so they're the same height. He does as she says, and she starts washing him. Then, out of nowhere, he grabs her, and they end up getting closer again. Afterward, when they're in the shower, she feels really relaxed. She mentions she's a little sore, and he pours something on her skin. She asks what he's doing, and he says he's putting lotion on her. She tells him she doesn't like it, because it gets sticky. He insists it'll feel smoother. She tells him she's sore, so he offers to give her a massage. As he starts, he notices how the rest of her skin is pale, but the spots where he touched her have turned red. He asks if they can do it again, but she tells him not to pretend like he's asking for permission, because she's tired. He tells her to stay still. He won't do anything else, just apply the lotion. She asks herself what that scent is. It smells like roses, and she wonders where it's coming from. He tells her he won't do anything, but the way he's applying the lotion is making it feel different, and the smell is strong. She tells him she doesn't like the scent of the lotion, and he says he knows she prefers his scent. She agrees and asks if he can spray some of that on her, but he says no way, it's his. She says he's so stingy, and he asks if she wasn't the one who said he's nice. She tells him if he's so nice, he should share his cologne too, and he laughs, saying he's not that nice. He tells her he won't touch her again, and that she should just go to sleep. She asks if he's going to do it again, and he says she knows him really well, and she's really smart. She tells him to tuck her in, and he teases her, asking if he's not better than a piece of cloth. She says maybe, and she thinks to herself that his scent really is nice. He then asks her to tell him what she was up to before she ended up in prison. She's about to sleep and wonders why he's asking. He insists that she should tell him, so she says she doesn't remember. He tells her to think hard, and if she remembers, he'll buy her some perfume. She asks if he's serious, and he says yes. After thinking for a moment, she says before going to prison, she learned how to make cakes from her sister. He reminds her that she once said she doesn't like cake. She says she does like eating it, and he tells her to continue. She explains that her sister got a job at a cake shop and learned some new skills. She then taught them to her, and they planned to open a dessert shop together later. He asks if she enjoyed it, and she says maybe she did, maybe she didn't. She thinks to herself that his eyelashes are too long. He then says even her eyelashes are beautiful, and she thinks to herself that he thinks just like she does. He asks if she didn't keep learning while she was there. She tells him no, and he asks why. She says she didn't want to without her sister. She only did it because she liked it. He asks what she likes, and she tells him nothing in particular. She asks if that's not enough, and says he should buy her some perfume. He says it doesn't make sense, there's not enough information, and it's not worth it. He asks if she's feeling sleepy, and she says yes. Then she asks when he will buy the perfume for her. He tells her to get some sleep first, and he'll get it once she shares a bit more. She calls him a calculating jerk, and says goodnight. He wishes her sweet dreams. The young man walks into the room, and all the other men greet him. He walks up to one man and greets him, first calling him father, but then quickly corrects himself and calls him chairman. Chairman Kwon Minchul asks how it went, and the young man says he lost them. The chairman asks what happened. The young man apologizes and says that director Kwon called first, and he's working to make it useful. The chairman nods and says, "Is that so?" Seo asks him why he keeps asking that again, pointing out that he's been acting strange lately. He asks her what she means, and she says he keeps prying into her life. He tells her that he's just curious, that's all. She says she won't eat the cake. She already told him she doesn't like cake. He tells her it's from a famous place, and that he stood in line for an hour to get it. She asks him who told him to wait in line, and why he's trying to get credit for it. She still won't eat it. He says that it's actually his birthday, so he thought they could at least share some cake, but now he's disappointed. She says he's not a kid, so why celebrate his birthday, while she teases him under the table. She tells him to quit the nonsense and just get on with it. He even left her halfway to go buy the cake. They still have to finish what they started, right? He left her right in the middle of things when they were about to get closer, leaving her hanging like a fool. 2 hours ago, they were about to get intimate when his phone rang, and he told her he'd be out for a moment. Now, he tells her he's been thinking for a few days and has gotten to know a bit about her. He knows her name, that she's an orphan, that she grew up in a foster home, and that she lived with an older sister she met there. He also knows she went to prison to seek revenge for her. She tells him that's because he asked, and he agrees, but says she doesn't seem curious about him at all. She hasn't even asked him his name. She thinks to herself that is right. She doesn't know his name, but for people who are just having a good time, isn't that distance enough? She asks why it matters. Knowing his name doesn't affect their relationship, does it? He says okay, he'll respect her view on that, and then gets up. He tells her something came up, so he'll go now and says goodbye. She asks him where he's going, confused, and he replies that if he's unemployed, then how has he been feeding her all this time? He tells her he actually has a main job too. She asks him when he'll be back, and he says he's not sure. There's a birthday party today, so he probably won't be back, and they won't see each other for a while. He tells her the sweet little vacation is over, and leaves a card on the table, saying she should make sure to eat. She's shocked and can't find the words to say. How is that even possible? She sits there, thinking that the sofa is so old it creaks. Was it always this quiet? It suddenly feels like she's been thrown into a completely strange world. She can't even hear the rain outside. They said the monsoon would last a long time this year. Has it already stopped? She remembers her sister calling her to the ocean and how she died. Seo thinks to herself that it's the young man's fault. He keeps asking about the past, and now she's having these strange thoughts. Then she feels someone's hand on her head. She asks him why he's there, and he asks if she's crying because he wouldn't be intimate with her. He teases her, saying she's really turned into a pervert, crying so sweetly and making him soft. She tells him she isn't crying and asks him what he's talking about. He looks at her and they kiss. Afterward, he asks if they should do it again. She thinks to herself that the fresh scent of him and the weight of his body on hers somehow makes her feel at ease. He's about to go again, but then he stops and tells her she's on her period. She's surprised and thinks to herself that it's unbelievable, being unable to do anything because of a period. She says it's annoying. He tells her that he's the one struggling to hold back, and she says that she's the one who actually has to resist the urge. She thinks to herself that he can just take care of himself if he needs to. Why was she born a woman? She says that they probably shouldn't be intimate while she's on her period, right? He tells her that no matter how much she likes it, she has to take care of her body. She says she doesn't really care that much. He tells her she should try to look at the bright side, but she says there's no bright side. He insists that when she waits, it feels so much better. Doesn't she trust him? She says no, and he jokes that it's because he's so good in bed. She complains that it's so unfair that she's the only one who can't be intimate, and tells him he should abstain too. He asks why, saying there are plenty of ways to finish without going all the way. He could just use her mouth. She tells him she's not doing that, so he should just keep dreaming. He begs her, but she says he shouldn't act all cute. She wonders aloud if celebrating his birthday together would make it feel different, and he asks why. Is she going to congratulate him? She says she will. She thinks to herself that he must care about his birthday since he waited an hour in line for the cake, but all he really wants is a simple happy birthday. His expectations seem pretty modest. She takes a bite of the cake, and although she's not a fan of it, she admits it's good. He asks her if it's good and says she should give him some. Just as she turns to offer him a bite, he kisses her and says it's good. Seo asks him what he's doing because people are staring. He asks where, should he end them? She tells him to just stop it. He rests his head on her shoulder and asks why she cried when he wasn't around. He wonders if it's because he didn't want to be intimate with her. She says it's nothing, just some random thoughts. He asks what kind of random thoughts, and she warns him not to start digging into it. He reminds her that she has to answer his questions if she wants that perfume. She asks if he knows what a spatula is, explaining it's the tool used to spread cream on cakes. He asks if it's the metal stick, and she tells him that her sister used it to take her own life. He asks why her sweet sister had to go through so much and promises that he'll protect her from now on. She tells him she doesn't need him to protect her, just to lend her strength when she needs it. He agrees, saying she should let him know whenever she needs it. She asks if he promises, and he says he does, on his pubic region. She asks why he'd make such a promise, and he says it's his pride, asking if it doesn't seem reliable. She thinks he's ridiculous and tells him to act his age. He agrees. He then asks if she can manage on her own, and she asks for how long. He tells her about 4 days if things go quickly. She asks if he can't just stay, but he says he has to feed her and will be back as soon as he can. She says she doesn't know, and he tells her not to think about anything else but him, and not to think about his pubic region. She asks why not. He tells her he's worried she'll get worked up, and asks someone else to take care of her. If that happens, she can kiss the perfume goodbye. She rolls her eyes and thinks to herself that if he's that worried, he shouldn't leave in the first place. Besides, how would he know unless she says something? He asks if she really thinks he wouldn't find out if she tried to hide it. One quick check and he'd know, so she should stop thinking nonsense. She wonders how he knew exactly what she was thinking. He says if she remains celibate, he'll bring back the perfume when he comes back. She tells him to forget it while holding his groin and says not to go. He tells her he's doing his best to hold back, but she's tempting him, and he might explode if she keeps it up. They kiss and hug, and he tells her it's not good for her health to do anything now, so she needs to hold back. She asks if they can't just do it anyway, and he says she's cute in unexpected ways. He tells her to stay and guard the house, and that he'll be back soon. She wonders what time it is and feels lethargic being alone. She hears a ringtone and thinks it can't be hers since she doesn't have a phone, or maybe he forgot his. The ringing continues, so she answers it. She says the phone's owner isn't there, and the person on the other end asks if she's awake. She asks if he's an idiot and why he left his phone behind. He says he didn't forget it, he left it. He tells her that from now on, she should answer the phone when it rings with his number. She should ignore the rest. He'll buy her a new phone when he gets back. She tells him she doesn't need one, since she has no one to call. He says she has him. She asks if he's not busy, and he asks why. Is she about to hang up? She says no, but if he's busy, she won't hang up so they can keep talking. There's no response. She asks why he suddenly went quiet and checks if the call has been cut off. She asks what he's doing, and he says he's just thinking. She asks if that's okay while he's working. He says her voice makes him feel calm, so it's all right. She asks why he's the only one having fun, and he tells her that good things come to those who wait. She asks why he doesn't wait then, and he says he's there to bring the good things. He needs to work hard. She says whatever. She tells him he's pretty bold to give her his card without knowing how she'll use it. He says it's fine, she can use it to buy whatever she needs. Then, someone calls his name, and he tells her he has to hang up. He says when she has time, she should eat something. She agrees. She thinks to herself that he made it sound like he would call right back, but then she gets another call and answers it. She hears a man asking if he raised him to be such a pathetic guy, asking if he's had enough fun by now. She recognizes the voice and hears him say he should bring her while he's still asking nicely. Then, the call ends. She thinks to herself that it was definitely Kwon Min-chul's voice. 6 years ago, before the rainy season even ended, Seong-ji disappeared and came back a week later in terrible condition. Seo asks her where she went and what happened, and then the next day, she left her forever. While going through Uni's belongings, she finds her suicide note. It says that she's reporting Kwon Min-chul, the director of Nyu Orphanage. He is the head of the Tigak crime organization, and the orphanage is being used as a front for money laundering. He has committed terrible crimes, including sending some of the children to brothels run by the organization. He's directly involved in the illegal activities, such as money laundering. Unnie exposed Kwon Min-chul's crimes, and she went to ask him what he did to her. He says it seems like she's getting quite bold. He asks if he raised her like that. She thinks to herself that maybe she should erase the call records for now. Could the suspicious call earlier be connected to Kwon Min-chul? What's their relationship anyway? Even after her period, there have been no calls, and he still hasn't come back. Our protagonist has so many things she wants to ask him, but it's like they can't talk unless he reaches out. How many days has it been? How has time passed so quickly? Today is Seungji's death anniversary. She suddenly thinks of a place she wants to go, wondering if he came back and is hiding to play a prank on her. No, that's not likely. He said he'd be back soon. Our girl wonders how he knows Kwon Min-chul, and why he saved his number under chairman. What kind of relationship do they have? A man stands in front of her and asks where she's going. She wonders who he is and asks why he's acting like that. The man says he can see why someone might lose their mind. She asks herself who he is, but then she remembers hearing the same thing before. Something about this man feels different though. His cologne smells strange and makes her feel uncomfortable. She tells him to move, but he grabs her hand and asks where she's going. He says she looks interesting, and she tells him to let go of her. He asks if he should check if director Kwon cleared the path for her. She wonders who that is. The man starts getting closer, and she thinks to herself that it feels strange. She liked it when the other man was close to her, but now her body isn't reacting. He asks her why she's looking at him like that, if she wants him to kiss her. She thinks about it, but it only makes her feel worse. She tells him to move away, but he doesn't seem to listen. He says something about the director teaching her, then pushes her. She wonders if she just got pushed. He tells her to act like she wants it, but she doesn't understand, her mind feels blank. He tells her to call him Oppa and act cute. He laughs, saying it's not working, so he'll have to teach her. He says she should be clinging to him, acting like she's desperate, because in this line of work, acting is everything. She doesn't care why he's doing this or who he is. Her body and mind are so tired, she just can't focus on anything else. He checks and notices she's not wearing underwear. She thinks that if she's going to let go, it doesn't have to be with just anyone, but somehow, she doesn't feel satisfied. As he's about to approach her, another guy suddenly pushes him away. She realizes, even from just seeing his back, that she knows who's come to help her. The guy keeps pushing the first one until another guy steps in and tells him to stop. He asks what he's been doing, saying he was supposed to be watching things. The man says he thought he was sent by the director, and apologizes. The other guy says the man should be locked up, and that he'll deal with him later. Seo wonders how someone who hasn't been around suddenly shows up like that. Who is he? The young man walks over to her, and puts his suit around her shoulders. She tells him to take it off, but he tells her to cover herself. She says she's fine, but he insists, saying she'll catch a cold. She reluctantly covers herself, and he tells her to follow him. She wonders what's the point of pretending to care, he's just a liar. Seo asks him if the guy from earlier is his friend, and he says yes, he knows him and apologizes. She thinks to herself that she knew it. He asks why she was planning to go out alone, if she hated it so much. She says she just wants to go to the ocean. He takes her there and starts kissing her. She says it's fine, her period is over. He holds her hands up and asks why she let that guy touch her, was it because she actually liked it? She says yes, she liked it. He says it didn't look like she liked it earlier, and she asks how he would know. He says if she liked it, would she have made that face? She asks herself what kind of expression she made. Honestly, she doesn't care anymore. Right now, she just wants to make him feel as bad as she did, so it's fair. She felt the same. She tells him she figured it's better to mess around with his friend than wait for someone who never calls or shows up. He asks if she didn't promise to abstain, and she says she doesn't know or remember. They are close. Seo says he's really making things hard for her. He asks what's so hard, and she says she can't even move a finger. She thinks to herself that when she was exhausted, he didn't stop, he pushed her all night. She says she wants to see the ocean, and he agrees, saying they'll get cleaned up and go. He starts kissing her again, and she says enough with the kisses, he should help her wash up. She can't move because of him, and he says he was going to help her anyway. He says he'll dry her hair for her and asks if the water is too hot. She thinks back to what the young man told her last night, and wonders if the director Kwon he mentioned could be the same person as this guy. She remembers the chairman he saved in his phone is Kwon Minchul. What should she do? What if it's not just a coincidence that he's living next door? She stands in front of the sea, thinking about how she almost went back there twice in her life. The first time was when she was young, on a family trip with her adoptive family. She got in the car all excited, but when they arrived, it turned out to be an orphanage. He asks about the second time, and she says Seunji suggested they should go, but she said no. She was scared that Seunji might abandon her there, just like before. But when she thinks about it now, she feels sorry for her. Seunji had never been to the beach, so she was going to take her, but Seunji disappeared. The next day, Seunji came back and took her own life. He asks why she wanted to go to the beach, if she doesn't have any good memories of the place. She says that a few days ago was her death anniversary, and she just slept through it. He asks if it's her first time at the beach, and she says yes. She adds that is also the first guy she's been close to like this. She tells him he looks nice when he smiles and shows his dimples. He asks if that's really true. He didn't even know he had dimples until she pointed it out. She says it's true, she can see them even when he smiles just a little. He says he hasn't had many reasons to smile. She says he must have smiled at least a few times in his life. He agrees but says no one ever cared enough to point out things like that. She thinks to herself that it's not like she cares either, but he seems to be in a good mood, so she'll let it slide. Or maybe she should give him what he wants for once. He asks her why she's not curious about him. She asks him what his name is, and he asks her what she means. She asks how old he is, and he says now she's curious. She thinks to herself that there's actually something she wants to ask, and that's about his connection to Kwon Minchul. He asks if they should go somewhere else instead of his house, and she asks why. He says he can't help it. She's too stunning and he has to hide her away where no one can find her. He tells her she looks like she could ascend to heaven. She asks why he's saying all of this, calling her an angel. He says yes, doesn't she think she's beautiful? She says she'll take that as a compliment, but tells him there's somewhere she wants to go. He asks where, and she says the prison where she was. He asks why, and she says she's going to visit Minyoung. She asks if that's okay, and he says there's no reason why it wouldn't be. Minyoung is excited to see Seo, and says she didn't expect her to come visit. She asks how Seo has been and comments that she's wearing her clothes, which look good on her. Seo asks if she knows Kwon Minchul. Minyoung asks how he made her do it, how he sent her to Barker Mansion. She says he trapped her. It wasn't about physical confinement with locked doors or tied limbs, but he held her captive through intimacy. If she showed any discomfort, he'd kiss her chest, and if he suggested going outside, he'd push himself on her. She says it feels like they've done nothing but be together since she came back, all day except when they sleep. Even though he's breaking her down exactly how he wants, she still feels strangely empty. She says she wants a cigarette, but he tells her he's all out. When he says he'll get something, it usually means the guy in the hoodie will take care of it. She figures it's obvious the hoodie guy is assigned to watch over her, and it's clear he's not happy with the whole situation. Seo asks why he keeps having the guy do things for him. She wonders if he's one of his lackeys, and he tells her he's like a close little brother. He starts touching her, and she tells him to take a break, saying he's been acting crazy lately. She asks what's wrong with him, and he says he's anxious. She asks anxious about what, and he says it's just some things. He asks if she doesn't want to hook up with him, and she tells him to forget about it and just tell her a fun story instead. He asks what kind of story she wants to hear, and she says he should tell her about himself. He says she can ask anything, but she tells him to just go on and ramble about it from the beginning. He asks if she's seen alleys piled with trash, saying that's where he started. He tells her he was tossed away in a plastic bag. She says it's the same for her. She was left at a subway station wrapped up in a newspaper. She says they're alike, both left in an alley, and asks what happened next. He says after that, someone picked him up, raised him, and here he is, all grown up, and he met her. Nothing special beyond that. She thinks to herself how strange it is that he sums up his whole 30-year life like that. She asks him what he was doing in his early 20s, and he says he was mostly in China until he was 24. She thinks to herself that her sister died 6 years ago, during the rainy season, which lines up with when she stabbed someone, so he must have been in Korea 6 years ago. She remembers her conversation with Minyoung, and how Minyoung didn't know who Kwon Minchul was. Minyoung had asked what she was talking about, coming all the way there just to ask strange questions. Seo says Barker Middle School, and mentions that Minyoung had said she went there. Seo says she passed by there not long ago and saw it, remembering the statue that Minyoung had said scared her. But Seo realizes that statue was put up recently, even though Minyoung had said it was there when she was in middle school. She says she's not trying to blame Minyoung, but just wants to know who sent her to Barker Mansion. Was it Kwon Minchul? Seo begs her to tell her, because she's the only one who can. Minyoung replies that it wasn't him, it was director Kwon who arranged it. She says director Kwon was the adopted son of the chairman. Seo tells her to move over because she's hungry. Minyoung asks since when she got hungry, and says Seo should just say what she wants to eat. Seo says never mind, he'll get Korean, Chinese, and Western food, and she should pick whatever she wants. She says he should get it himself, and stop making someone else do everything for him. He asks what if something happens to his beauty while he's gone. Seo says nothing, that her legs are so weak she can barely walk. She tells him to go ahead, and she'll rest while he's gone, planning to sleep. He says she should rest while he gets it, and he'll be back soon. Seo thinks to herself that he's really gone. She doesn't have a phone or anyone to contact, but there's one number she's memorized, so she calls it. She says it's Seo, and the man on the other end says he heard she got out. She asks where he is, and he asks why she wants to know. She tells him she wants to kill him. The guy in the hoodie asks Seo why she came here and where she's going. She thinks to herself that it's obvious he's here to keep an eye on her, just as she suspected. She asks him what she's supposed to do with that information. He asks if the director called her and says he'll check. She tells him there's no need to check, that he didn't call her. She's trying to leave, and if he comes looking for her, he can just say she ran off. He asks if she's crazy and tells her she should go back inside. Things are already messed up, and she shouldn't make it worse. He says she should go inside quietly. She asks what he's even talking about, telling him to move and stop getting in her way. He curses and says, does she think he's protecting her because he wants to? He'd love nothing more than to get rid of her right in front of the director. She asks what exactly he's protecting her from, what's so dangerous that she needs protection. He tells her to go back inside. He looks around and sees other men, asking them what they are doing there. The men hold him down while she walks away. She says she'll disappear like she wants, so he should ignore her. She tells him to make up an excuse, to say he tried his best to protect her, but couldn't stop those thugs from breaking in. She thinks to herself that she doesn't need any of the things that kept her sheltered from the rain, like the umbrella someone gave her when she was released or Minyoung's place. None of it matters now, she's ending it. One of the men tells her to go inside. She thinks to herself that she's finally meeting Kwon Minchul. The young man she met before says it looks like she actually came. They meet again, and she says it looks like he took a beating, that must have hurt. He asks what she's talking about and holds her. The other men hold him down and tell him to calm down. He says he's just thinking about how he got beat up, because of her. She asks if they all gang up on him, and he asks why he should hit her when they're probably busy taking their turn with her. She tells him to stop with the nonsense and asks where Kwon Minchul is. He asks if she thinks the chairman is her friend, saying he figured she was crazy when she willingly went there. He tells her to go ahead, there's an order to everything. As soon as she steps out, he's the first one who gets a turn with her. She tells him he's not the first. Kwon has already had his fill as she walks away. Seo walks into the chairman's office, and he says she looks even prettier. She replies that it's been a long time. He mentions he heard she's been having a good time with director Kwon, and she says it's not bad at all. He says she's loosened up quite a bit, and has become quite useful. He adds that women who don't know men well don't sell, which is why Seungji got hit so often, but Seo is there to kill him barehanded. She tells him that's not true, there's no way she could kill him. The chairman says she used to have the guts to grab a knife, and tells her to stop calling him Director M. He closed the orphanage a long time ago. She asks why, wondering if he couldn't find any more women worth selling. He asks if she really needs to ask. He says he had to get rid of it because of her, that she nearly exposed them. She asks where he gets his women these days, and he says that's none of her business. All she needs to do is spread her legs for Seungji's share. He wants to see how well Kwon trained her. He tells her to come closer, but she refuses. He says she's stubborn, like Seungji, even though they're not related, and it seems like a beating is the only way to get through to her. He says her sister took a week to break, and he wonders how long it'll take her, but she stabs his leg. He asks if she has a death wish, just thinking about how she's made him walk on eggshells at his age. Somehow, getting hit makes her feel alive, like she could die but still feel alive. She thinks she can keep breaking down, that she needs to break further because someone like her deserves to die. Then, Director Kwon walks in and asks what's going on. The chairman asks if there's no one outside to stop Director Kwon. The young man calls Seo and apologizes for being late, saying that they should get revenge. Seo tells him to take care of Kwon Minchul. She doesn't have the strength to do it herself. He says he will, and he promised to help her if she needed it. He walks toward the chairman, and the chairman asks how dare he point something like that at him. He laughs at her, thinking the plastic knife she aimed at him years ago was nothing to fear. The chairman says he is the one who took him in and made him what he is today, he's like a father to him. Director Kwon responds by stabbing him. Kwon Minchul is dead. Seo remembers when her sister died and the orphanage was temporarily shut down. She fought to keep him in prison, but he was released, and the case was closed. The man she thought she could never defeat is gone, and now it feels like it's finally over. She feels like everything has come to an end. She feels like someone like her should disappear, and in a moment of despair, she tries to harm herself. Director Kwon rushes to her. She's always wanted to escape, from the moment she realized she'd been abandoned at birth, when her adoptive parents neglected her and sent her back to when her sister disappeared, and to the time she spent in prison. The thought of ending it all never left her. There were only a few times when she thought differently, like when she baked a cake for her sister. Oddly, another moment stood out, when she smelled a certain man's scent. It made her feel clean, like it washed away the old feelings of pain and fear. Seo realizes she's still alive, and sees the young man beside her. She thinks about her conversation with Minyoung. She asks him why he didn't take her in right after she was released. Why did he use her to bring her into all of this? He tells her that he heard that director Kwon's mother was also from Nio orphanage, and that Kwon Minchul had been selling girls to brothels even back then. One of those girls was Kwon's mother. When her unease report came out, Seo thinks that's when Kwon found out about everything. Seo asks what this has to do with her, and he says that maybe director Kwon took her in to get back at the chairman. He doesn't know the full story, but he was just doing what he was told. Even so, he says he really liked her, and he's truly sorry. She asks why she's in the hospital. He asks how she's feeling and if she's okay. She wonders if he brought her here, and why he did it. She asks why he didn't just leave her to die. He's confused and asks what she means. She wonders if he's afraid they won't be intimate again. She says men only care about that. She asks how she can even say something like that. Then she wonders if he thinks it would be a shame if someone like her died. He asks her what she was thinking going to Kwon Minchul like that, since she's the one who reached out to him first. Seo thinks his voice sounds different, like he's holding something back. She realizes she's the same. She's never seen him like this before, but she's been holding back too. He asks her what she was thinking when she crawled in there. He asks if it was revenge that made her act so recklessly. Seo asks if he knew it was Kwon Minchul she stabbed. He knew even before she told him about stabbing him when she was 20. She figures it doesn't matter anymore. She says there's only one thing she wants to know. 6 years ago, what was he doing? Did he know about her sister's death? She wonders if he's targeting her just like he did with her sister. She says it doesn't matter. She wasn't trying to get revenge. She just ended up running away to prison. She wasn't strong enough for revenge anyway. She barely managed to protect herself. Back then, when Kwon Minchul tried to assault her, she stabbed him and turned herself in. She thought if she ended up in prison, he wouldn't be able to find her. He tells her she should have told him earlier. If she had, he would have made Kwon's death a lot more painful. She tells him not to act all righteous. He didn't kill Kwon Minchul because of her. It was his plan from the start, wasn't it? He asks if she already knew something, and she says she has a rough idea. Kwon Minchul ruined her mother, just like he did to her sister. That's why he wanted revenge. She figures teaming up with Minyoung to push her away was probably just to piss off Kwon, and once she became useful, he planned to sell her off, didn't he? He asks her what she's saying, and she says he approached her with an agenda from the start, and now he's acting like he killed Kwon for her. He calls her out. She tells him to get lost. Being forced to survive, because of him makes her feel miserable. He asks if she didn't go there for revenge, but if she went there to die. She admits that's right, she went there to die because Kwon Minchul was the one who could break her. She wonders why every time she denies his words, they still feel true. She says it doesn't matter now. Everything feels meaningless, and she has nothing left. That man helped her, but he also made things harder. Seeing something good only made the emptiness worse. He pulls her into a hug, and she says it's all because of him. He was too nice, too thoughtful. She doesn't know why she still likes being close to him. She notices his familiar, clean scent again, and it makes her feel strange, like everything might be okay for a moment. She doesn't understand why someone like him can still make her feel safe. The heavy thoughts she always has start to fade a little, and she wonders why she suddenly feels like holding on. He tells her he's going to explain everything, and she should just listen. He says it all started at the dump, the one he mentioned before. That's where Kwon Minchul found him, abandoned and left behind. He grows up in gang hideouts, rolling through one dangerous situation after another, and it feels natural to him. That life becomes his, without question. He figures he's around 20 when a woman shows up out of nowhere, barely holding herself together, calling him her son. At first, he doesn't believe her, but deep down, something about her words feels right. She rambles on, saying all sorts of things, and he wonders if it's her way of easing her guilt for leaving him behind. It's almost funny, the way she talks like it's going to fix anything. Because of her, he learns his birthday for the first time. Not long after, she's gone. He spends his days doing what is told, one task after another, until everything blurs together. Time slips away from him, and then the group he's tied to starts falling apart. That's when he ends up back in Korea. It happens after Woo Seung-ji leaves behind a report, and then takes her own life. Suddenly, it clicks for him. He understands why his mother had to abandon him. For the first time, he feels like killing Kwon Minchul, the man responsible for everything. He sets a goal, but before he can act, someone else beats him to it and stabs Kwon Minchul first. That person catches his interest right away. His first impression of her is simple, unstable. She's a girl in her early 20s, but she looks like someone who's already given up on life, like she's seen everything and decided none of it matters. He's curious about her. What kind of person could end up so lifeless at such a young age? When he finally sees her, there's something tragic about her, like she's just waiting to disappear. She carries this quiet, fragile energy, like a single push could break her, yet she's chasing revenge. He wonders what someone like her could possibly hope to achieve with a body so weak. People talk about how beautiful she is, but he barely notices. That's not what holds his attention. It's her attitude. She doesn't try to defend herself, or plead her case. She doesn't even flinch when the judge gives her sentence. She just stands there, silent and still, like nothing matters. Watching her leaves him feeling strange, like he's missing something. Then, just for a moment, her eyes meet his, and it feels like the air shifts. He laughs at himself, because it's clear he imagined it. She probably wasn't even looking at him. Maybe she was staring at the door, thinking about how to escape. That makes more sense. Still, he can't stop wondering why she rushed in so recklessly, only to end up like that. Kwon Minchul isn't someone you can just go up against. He's too strong, too smart, too ruthless. Even for him, standing up to Kwon Minchul feels like an impossible task. He went there out of curiosity, wanting to see what kind of girl would have the nerve to stab someone like that. But when he sees her, all he can think is, what was she hoping to achieve with that tiny frame of hers? How did she even get mixed up with someone as dangerous as Kwon Minchul? Time passes, and revenge comes for Kwon Minchul slowly but surely. Everything he has is stripped away piece by piece. Every now and then, she crosses his mind, and he can't shake the memory of her. One day, he gives Minyoung a picture of her and asks if she knows her. That's the first time in 5 years he's brought her up. Then, 5 years later, she's finally out. She still has that same tired, worn-out look in her eyes, like nothing has changed. It's raining, and he notices right away that she doesn't have an umbrella. He wonders if they really let her out like that, just sent her into the rain without a second thought. He decides to follow her to see where she's going. She doesn't even try to find cover, just keeps walking through the downpour. The distance between them gets smaller, but even when he's close, she doesn't look at him. She doesn't even seem to notice. She's soaked, drenched from head to toe, and he can tell she won't make it much farther before the cold takes her down. He can't just leave her like that. So he steps forward and hands her an umbrella. He waits to see if she'll finally look at him, but she doesn't. She just takes it and walks away without a word. He wonders if it's because she's lazy or just not thinking at all. She's so indifferent it's almost unreal. But it doesn't matter. He's already decided their first real meeting will happen at Barker, and he's not in any rush. He decides the best way to protect her is to break down her guard first. He pretends to be a friendly neighbor, someone she doesn't have to be wary of. Once she trusts him, he'll send her off to the countryside under the excuse of work, far away from Kwon Minchul. He remembers Minyoung telling him that Seo seems overly dependent, probably because of all the scars she carries. But when someone gets close, she's surprisingly talkative, even honest, like a child who's been starved of love. She's quiet, but even an old man who's seen too much would seem livelier than her. He tells himself he's just trying to save a life that's been ruined by getting involved with someone like Kwon Minchul. Maybe, if he's lucky, he can annoy the chairman a bit while he's at it. But then he hears her voice, the one he's been wondering about all this time, and something inside him shifts. She's nothing like he expected. She's unpredictable. She has this innocent look, but she smokes a cigarette like it's a challenge to the world. One moment, she rejects him, like she doesn't care, and then the next, she's calling him back again. She's frustrating and confusing, but somehow, she makes his dull, grey world feel alive for the first time. He thinks about how his mother was killed by the chairman, and it only makes him more determined to keep her safe. She says she only feels alive when she's close to someone, when she can feel their warmth, and he wonders if staying by her side is the only way to keep her alive. After all, isn't that what the living are supposed to do? Keep going, no matter how hard it gets. Someone warns him that the chairman is starting to catch on. They say he keeps bringing up her name and that woman from the past. They suggest sending her away quickly before things get worse. But he just brushes it off, asking why they can't handle something so simple. He knows it's dangerous, but letting her go isn't something he's ready to do. He keeps putting off sending her away, because he wants to see her for just a little longer. She's so fragile, so unstable, that some days he feels like she could vanish without a trace, leaving nothing behind. That fear eats away at him, so he tries to keep her close in the only way he knows how, by confining her with physical closeness, hoping it will leave her no space for other thoughts. He convinces himself he has enough control over her, enough to keep her safe. But it's all in his head. She's not what he expected, and when she finally slips away, it hits him harder than anything. Her escape is like a slap in the face, teaching him a truth he doesn't want to admit. He's been doing it all wrong. Instead of hiding her away from the world, he should have been hiding himself from her, because the truth is, he's the one who can't let go. He needs to see her, needs her near, even if it's selfish. He was so caught up in the idea of saving her, so focused on protecting her from everything, that he didn't see what was right in front of him. Her heart was breaking, and he didn't even notice until it was too late. If you're eager for the next chapter, drop a comment expressing your interest in a part 3. Don't forget to subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated. Until next time, ciao.